We are the Journal Star editorial board, and we are with City Council candidate Tom Beckius for his editorial board endorsement interview. Tom, thank you for being with us. We'll just run around the horn really fast, say who we are, and then we'll get into questions for you. Okay. I'm Dave Bundy. I'm the editor here. Kent, you want to go?
Yeah, Kent Waldemott. I cover arts and entertainment, and I've been on the editorial board for about 12 years now.
Hey, Kent.
Hey, Tom.
I'm Robbie Estes. I'm the controller at the Journal Star, and I've been on the edit board about 2.5 years.
Hey, Robbie.
Hi.
And Tom, I'm the John Schreier. I'm one of the assistant city editors here, and I've been on the editorial board about 4 years. So.
Hi, John.
Yep, hi.
I just noticed this. Tom and I are the only clean-cut ones among us. The board's
if you would have seen me about 2 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case, but.
Okay. Well, Tom, we will just launch into our questions. I have a series of them that we've asked, variations that we've asked all the candidates. The other edit board members will jump in if they've got a follow-up question, and we will keep this to 30 minutes.
Okay.
So first question, we've got an interesting vantage point of the city council here from the newsroom, and I gotta say, it hasn't looked like a lot of fun in the last year. So why do you want to be on the city council, and what has prepared you to run and to serve?
Sure. I don't necessarily disagree with that commentary. But I think that, we still have opportunities to improve our lives together. And I get to see those opportunities every day. I recognize the vast complexities of helping to run a city. And I put in the time and work to understand the difficult interests and balance of those interests for our various community stakeholders. I currently serve as the vice chair of the Lincoln-Lancaster County Planning Commission. And I've served on the Planning Commission for the past 5 years. And during that time, I have been involved with the 2018 Downtown Master Plan and its implementation. And currently, we're right in the middle of the 2050 Comp Plan update as well. And that experience has really set me up well for knowing and learning about city issues. Now, also previous to that, I have 6 years of city experience before that too, volunteer city experience. I've served on the board of the Lincoln City Library System. I gave 6 years of service to the Community Health Endowment of Lincoln, which really taught me the needs in our community, especially as it relates to medical homes and things like of that nature. And then I've also served on the Lincoln Commission on Human Rights for a period of time, which a lot of people don't know about, but they deal with employment and housing discrimination here in our community. And a lot of those folks are immigrants and refugees, and working to make sure that those folks get a fair shake when it comes to those facets of our community. I've also been heavily involved in the business sector of our community as well. I've served on the board of the Lincoln Young Professionals Group for a couple of years and did a lot of work with that group. That's probably where I'm most known here in town, is the work with the Young Professionals Group. But I've also served on the board of the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. I think vigorous economic activity in the city of Lincoln benefits us all. I currently am a realtor and have previously served on the Commercial Realtors Association board, as well as the home builders. I've done a lot of work in the nonprofit community. I'm a former board member of Out Nebraska, which, at the time it was called Outlink, but now it's called Out Nebraska. It's an advocacy group for our gay and lesbian constituents. I'm gay as well. And then, also making sure that we're doing everything we can to be advocates for a strong school system, whether that's a public school system like Lincoln Public Schools, or an institutional state system like the University of Nebraska. I've served on the Community Advisory Council for the University of Nebraska system under Dr. Hank Bounds. and currently am serving on the board of counselors for the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I'm also a small business owner as well in my spare time, working in construction and real estate. So these experiences, I think, have allowed me or will allow me to hit the ground running when it comes to serving the city of Lincoln. I think I'm well equipped and a multifaceted candidate to effectuate change. And that's really why I'm running, is to effectuate change. The difference between a community leader and a city council person is the ability to legislate. And I recognize that fully. I'm running to become a bold and ambitious city legislator who focuses on the pressing matters of the day, and all of that being backed with the foundation of knowledge, a strong set of values, the practical know-how as to how entities interact with each other in our community, and the ability to build consensus, because at the end of the day, one person can't do it. At the end of the day, I'll need to build consensus with my peers, regardless of their party affiliation. At the end of the day, I don't think good city policy is Republican or Democratic. It simply moves Lincoln forward. So sorry, that's a long answer. I apologize, but
That's okay.
yeah.
Just so you know, in the middle of your answer, Pat Sangemino joined us. He is
Okay.
Night City editor here and a member of the editorial board.
Hey, Pat.
He's muted because he's in the middle of the newsroom. And a lot of times there's some colorful language going on around him. And so it's safest for us all. What do you see as the most important issues facing the city council? And they can be sort of big and nebulous, or they can be as nitty gritty as one especially bad pothole. What do you think?
I think we have a couple of issues currently in front of the city council that we're still working through, and things that we have yet to attack that I think are pretty big in our community. I think public safety and police reform are huge facets that we're still working through here in the city of Lincoln. I'm a big proponent of the men and women that help protect the city of Lincoln, but at the same time, I'm also a big proponent of community-based services that help aid those folks needing mental health assistance, addiction recovery specialists, social service help. I don't think that those things are mutually exclusive either. That being said, I think when it comes to police reform and what we saw last summer, I think that those are issues that are still ongoing, and rightfully so. I am, however, pleased to see the implementation of the police department instituting new policies when it comes to mandating when a weapon is drawn, when the police department is now required, officers are required to intervene when they think an officer is acting out of line or dangerously. I'm also a big fan of the mental health coordinator position that LPD instituted with the last budget cycle. I think that's really helpful. And I also am a big fan of LB 51, which is currently in the Nebraska legislature, that I think will, it's kind of known as the bill that will professionalize some of our police work, but also, instituting a database to make sure that policemen and women that are not professional are being tracked accordingly, making sure we have mental health evaluations on police, those things. And then the other thing that I think is really important that I don't think we've attacked enough of is housing affordability here in Lincoln as well. Now, I think we have a lot of work to do. We've done some work when it comes to attacking housing affordability when it comes to our lowest income residents. But I think we have a lot more work to do when it comes to housing affordability generally, which is the vast majority of Lincoln residents. We have opportunities, I believe, to investigate minimum lot sizes, lot widths, building setbacks that can really help to make the most and best use of our land possible. You know, on the new growth edges of our city, we see opportunities, I believe, to really make an impact when it comes to apartment building heights, for example. You know, the ability to build higher with using a wood product is greatly changing as we advance and innovation advances with wood product, meaning that we can build units more cheaply. But right now our city code doesn't even allow us to build to the heights that we can with a wood product. So we need to do some updating there. South Bend, Indiana just went through a process where they eliminated all parking requirements in their city, which might seem a little extreme, but on the other hand, is something to further investigate, I think, as a city, to make sure that we are doing the best that we can with the land that we have. And then also, you know, exploring and trying to incentivize new housing types, I think is really important as well. I think young professionals and empty nesters can really be the folks that will help institute those changes, especially when we look at things like live workspaces or row houses, or even small houses. A couple of things that I would also note, I think it's really important that we try to align our city policies with national best practices when it comes to housing affordability. A couple of examples I might share with that. You know, for example, our city's TIF policy, as it relates to affordable housing, only allows us to develop or use TIF for housing projects that are within the 1950 City of Lincoln city limit. So if we're trying to do an affordable housing project outside of the 1950 city limit, we don't have the ability to use TIF on that project, which is our local main tool to give to developers to institute affordable housing. That's a self-imposed policy by the City of Lincoln, the Urban Development Department. And what we know through national best practices is that affordable housing is best implemented and has the most impact for its clients when it's implemented in mixed income neighborhoods. So I think we're really missing an opportunity there. And then also Housing and Urban Development, HUD, has been very specific when they've talked about the ability to use mobile homes as an alternative for affordable housing product. That has been basically given a cold shoulder in our community, but on the national level, it's very much used as a tool to attract those things. So I really think, given I also build homes as well. So, you know, I think I'm uniquely positioned to really attack housing affordability. And that's something that I would really like to work on if elected within my first year. So.
Well, I have to say, everybody's talked about housing affordability, and you
Yeah.
dragged us out into the weeds there more than anybody else. But that was
I'm
some
sorry.
interesting no, those are some very interesting weeds. I didn't know about that 1950 thing. So
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get so down in the weeds.
no, that's I think that's very interesting stuff, and it's in a detail some things that you know, we were talking with the Realtors Association president yesterday, sure. And that you've given us some additional context that I think is actually really helpful. To switch gears, COVID has been a game changer in a lot of ways. How have the events related to COVID in the last year changed the way you think about people's relationship with government, any particular policies, our relationships with each other?
Sure. I think that probably COVID and the pandemic for everyone, at least for me personally, let me start there, has really shown to me the importance of the interconnectivity that we have with each other. You know, I can't sit here and tell you for the past year I've been thriving in the way that I was before. That's not the case for me. And I don't know that that's not the case for a lot of people. I think we've seen the need of community in a way that we'll probably never see again in our lifetime if we're really so lucky. When it comes to COVID and the relationship with government, with city government in particular. Let me talk specifically about the city council relationship with the mayor's office and the county health and the city health department. I'm a big believer, and I've said this time and time again, that a politician's role in a public health emergency is a very limited role. That's by design. That's not a mistake. And I think it best serves the interests of our city. The health director has been given her authority to do what she needs to do in order to best manage a public health crisis. That I think is key in making sure that at the end of the day, when we're in a dire emergency like we have been for the last year, we have the role of politics removed from that process. I'm okay with that. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think a city councilor's role, I think a mayor's role, is to make sure that the public health director has the ability and the tools that she needs, the funding that she needs, in order to appropriately attack that problem. I think that everything else outside of the purview of the public health director is the role of the city council and the mayor's office, whether that's doing what we can to make sure business still thrives as much as possible, making sure that we know that the public has the tools that they need to be successful. But at the end of the day, I don't believe that the city council should be needlessly interfering with the role of the public health director in a public health crisis. And I am a big proponent of remaining, the city of Lincoln remaining in an emergency declaration in order to continue to receive pandemic-related funding from the Fed or the national or state level. I think that those two items are key in making sure that we transgress through and get to the other side of this pandemic as well as we can.
Okay, thank you. We were joined, and I hope, Martha, that I didn't leave you hanging out there for too long. I kept
You
looking,
kinda
but
did, that's okay. But Tom, Tom and I know each other. It's good.
Hi, Martha.
We're good.
all right. Okay. Well, I've got two more questions. I'm going to ask one of them. Then I'm going to have we'll check and see if other board members have questions, and then I'll finish up with my final one. Tell me what your views are on government transparency, inclusion and accessibility for our citizens. Do they have the access to government that they need, to the council that they need? And if not, how do we, what would you propose?
Sure. I think that we've seen an interesting time with the pandemic over the past year when it comes to the public's ability or perceived ability to have access to the council. Generally speaking, I think access to the council is good. The council, I think most council members, the ones that I have interacted with, are responsive to citizen input, responsive to citizen questions. Have the ability to call, email, or appear in person in front of the city council. I think all of those steps are appropriate and will be maintained. I think the ability to testify via Zoom during the pandemic has strengthened those abilities to access members of the city council and testify on issues important to citizens. Transparency and accountability are key. They are key not only when it comes to working with the city council, but actually in every aspect of city government. So I want to emphasize that I believe that those are key, and those are aspects of service that I intend to bring to my service if elected as well. I was not a fan of the dust up regarding the ability to testify recently with the city council regarding the emergency declaration. I would have preferred to see the city council put the emergency declaration up for a public discussion and a vote and call it done one way or another. I was not a fan of the movement to table that issue so that discussion couldn't take place in an open forum. I don't think that's the role of the city council. One of the, if not the major interactions with the city council is the ability to facilitate a citizen's need to provide feedback to their government. That is one of the very major roles. And I was disappointed to see that ability being hastened when it came to speaking on the vote on the emergency declaration.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And now I'm going to see if any of our editorial board members have a question for you.
Uh-oh, it's a quiet group.
No, yeah, Kent was gonna jump in. I knew it. He was just being a nice guy, giving somebody else a first shot.
Yeah. First off, anybody that served on the planning commission for 5 years deserves commendation no matter what.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Once a year we get cookies, Kent, so it's okay.
I've been asking people about city council candidates about policing. You handled that earlier, but the other thing I've also been asking about is the climate action plan, and also, do you feel like the flooding issue should be rolled into that and taken into consideration together with that? So it seems to me like they're kind of related.
I agree. I think they are related, Ken. One thing about being a planning commissioner is that I have a voting record, unlike a lot of other non-incumbent candidates. So I voted in support of the climate action plan. I believe that carbon emission is harmful to our planet. I believe that that is fact. And I also believe that the goal of achieving an 80% decrease in carbon emissions by 2050 is a laudable goal, even though President Biden just went above and beyond that by trying to get to zero or completely renewable energy by 2035. When it comes to the climate action plan, a lot of the feedback, Kent, that I've heard is the worry about the implementation costs. And I hear that loud and clear. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. However, the climate action plan is a plan no different than any other plan that the city of Lincoln works on, that any other city department works on. So for example, the 2050 comprehensive plan has no cost estimate assigned to it because it's simply that, a plan. And that at the end of the day, the implementation process and corresponding fiscal responsibilities of that plan are piecemealed out and approved independently by the council. So I don't have a real problem with the plan not having a fiscal note, if you will, attached to it right now. And I also believe that as time goes on through the implementation period, that we'll see costs reduce due to market expansion and innovation growing as well. So I'm confident that as far as the Salt Creek resiliency study is mentioned or has been folded in as a part of that plan, I'm okay with that. However, I've also heard feedback from our community that certain members of our community would like to see the Salt Creek resiliency study separated from the climate action plan. And I'm okay with that too. If people want to separate out those two items and speak to them individually, that's fine. But I'm also okay with them being implemented as one, because at the end of the day, they speak to each other, don't they? The Salt Creek resiliency study speaks to the impacts of climate change that we are already seeing and potentially will see going down the road when it comes to flooding issues along Salt Creek. those flooding issues, if you believe the science, which I do, will continue to get worse over time, and we need to plan accordingly for that. That is largely a result of climate change. So it does, I think, pair nicely with the climate action plan, but if people want to discuss those items separately, I'm fine with that too. You know, it was interesting actually today on the back page of the first section of the newspaper was a nice article about, you know, transferring to renewable energies and the job prospects there. And I think that there's probably, you know, some good crossover jobs there and some good opportunity there too that I think, you know, those opportunities really grow when cities around the United States say, this is what we want to do. And they kind of create the marketplace for that to happen, because when a city says, this is this is the direction we want to move in, that allows private industry to step up and meet the need because they know they have a client, they know they have a customer. Those things go hand in hand and they're very important.
Anybody else have a question for Tom before I ask my
I don't
last
have a
question?
question. I just wanted to tell Tom, thanks. I have to go to another meeting, but I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Robbie. Thanks.
Nice to meet you.
Did you
Anyone else,
talk
Martha?
about COVID? Did you talk about COVID?
Yeah, we did. If you've got, you know, I asked you, you sort of know the question I asked, which is, how did
Right.
it change your,
Right.
so if you've got something else.
Yeah, my question is kind of deals with Lincoln residents and vaccination, but for those folks that are undocumented, because there's been a concern about that as well. So, and I kind of position this as, I'm not sure this is the role of the city council. However, I'm going to ask the question anyway. So,
You know, Martha, I think it is within the purview of the city council, and I'm glad you used the word resident and not citizen. Because I think my role as a city councilman is to ensure that all residents of our city have proper protection, and that includes access to the vaccine. You know, I've been pleased to see the health department reach out to minority communities to make sure that vaccinations are going forward, and especially given access to minority communities so that they know that vaccines are safe and available to them. I think El Centro just held one yesterday, if I remember correctly. But I disagree, Martha, with the views of state leadership when they state that undocumented residents should not be given access to the vaccine. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I believe that at the end of the day, my role as a city council person is to make sure that our community is thriving as best we can. And at the end of the day, to me, that does not, I don't draw a line at citizenship.
thank you.
You bet.
All right, well, the last question is the easiest, Tom.
We'll see.
Yeah, what didn't we ask that you were just dying for us to ask? You've got some great answer to a question we never asked. What do you want to say?
Well, you know, I was kind of hoping that we could talk a little bit about protections, the fairness ordinance and protections for LGBTQ folks, you know, a little bit. You know, I think, you know, much to Martha's last question, I think a role of a city councilman or council person, excuse me, is to reduce inequalities in our community and the subsequent disparities that are created because of those inequalities. I want to be on the record and make it very clear that I support LGBTQ fairness in our community. And I've been fighting for that on many different levels for many different years. Like I said, I'm a former board member of out Nebraska, but also I've worked institutionally to help create change in that area through community partners like Lincoln's Young Professionals Group and the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. You know, and I can remember very distinctly in 2012, I first was appointed as a board member for Lincoln's Young Professionals Group, and we contemplated testifying on behalf of the fairness ordinance. that ultimately that vote went 9-1 against, and I was the sole person voting in favor of testifying in support of that ordinance. But at the end of the day, you don't give up. At the end of the day, you keep working. And so throughout my time as a member of that group, I implemented the change to work through with my peers on that board to, within a year, flip 10-0 in support of that change. And we testified, I testified personally in front of the Nebraska Legislature Judiciary Committee on behalf of Lincoln's Young Professionals Group to support that issue. And then eventually we were able to work that up through the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, where now you have the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce supporting that issue in a very visible way, which I think is commendable. But I think also I was disappointed to see some folks, some fellow candidates say that the Boswick versus Clayton County decision by the Supreme Court should influence what city policy should reflect. Let's be clear, Boswick versus Clayton County only speaks to employment discrimination. It does not speak to accommodation, public accommodation. It does not speak to housing. I was disappointed to see that people want our city ordinance now to mirror Boswick versus Clayton County. We still have a lot of work to do on that front. Megan Hunt has introduced, I think it's LB 220 or LB 230. Honestly, I can't remember. I apologize. To specifically work on accommodation, public accommodation and housing. Those are still fronts that we need to tackle. And I'm not willing to give up on those items. And I still think they're worth fighting for. So sorry, once again, I apologize. Too much talking. We've gone over time.
No, that's okay. We appreciate the information. It's been informative and helpful. Tom, thank you for your time. Thank you for sticking your neck out and running. That's always easier not to run for office than it is to run for office. So,
well, thank you all very much for your time. I surely appreciate it. And do you guys want a resume or anything like that? I'd be happy to email one over if you'd like it. But
no, I think, but we got the information you sent, the voter's guide, other stuff's available. At this point, we feel like we know you pretty well.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you all again. I surely appreciate it. It was nice to meet everyone and see those of you that I knew already again.
All right. Thanks so much,
All right.
Tom.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks, Tom.